Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about weddings, and specifically it's about my top 5 tips to shooting cinematic wedding videos. Now, tip number 1 of course comes down to camera choice. Now there's no such thing as the perfect camera, despite what some people might tell you, but there is such a thing as the perfect camera for you. Now this may come down to many factors as to what's important when you're actually choosing a camera for yourself, such as ease of use, price, the weight of the camera, or what lenses you already have might fit that camera. But when it comes down to cinematic wedding videos, for me and my style of shooting, it's all about that frame rate and what frame rate your camera can shoot in. Now I shoot all of my wedding videos on the Nikon mirrorless Z6, which is what this video is being filmed on now. So the Z6 is a mirrorless camera which is capable of shooting at 1080p at 60 frames per second, even 120 frames per second, and it can shoot 4K at up to 30 frames per second. Now I shoot the majority of my wedding videos in 1080p at 60 frames per second, mainly because I love the choice of being able to use any clip that I film in buttery slow motion, because I think that really adds to the clip being and the overall film being more cinematic. Now what camera to actually buy is a whole nother video, and ultimately that just comes down to you and what you're comfortable with. People will always tell you differently as to what is the best camera to get, but at the end of the day you just have to make up your choice as to what suits you best. The tip number 2 is actually all about stabilizers, and the thing that's going to separate you from amateur filmmakers is having steady footage, and not footage that is shaking all over the place, making the viewer feel really sick. Now there's several ways of actually achieving steady footage, and don't get me wrong, having handheld video footage is brilliant and it has its place, and I like to use that in the evening do of a wedding when everyone's dancing around. I feel like it's a more up-paced time of the video, and I like to have it in 24 frames per second in handheld with a bit of shake and movement as everyone's dancing around. Now there are 2 real choices when it comes to stabilizers, and that's either glide cams or motorized gimbals. Now I like to use a motorized gimbal, and I actually use the Zhiyun Crane Plus, which retails at around £320. There are other models like the DJI Ronin S, which is another great gimbal, and that comes in at around £450, £460. I personally like to use motorized gimbals because I've used them for hours and hours now, and I feel that's just what I feel comfortable using. Glide cams are another great way to get steady footage. Using a glide cam does normally require a bit more skill and practice, but it's definitely a skill worth having, and it's going to help you with all of your filmmaking in general. You may just have to be willing to put the time in to learn that skill of using a glide cam, whereas with a motorized gimbal, don't get me wrong, there's still technique in using one and getting steady footage, but it's a lot easier to pick up from a beginner's point of view. Now moving on to tip number 3 is all about focal lengths. Now as the videographer, it's your job to make the couple and everyone there look as flattering as possible, and getting the focal length right in each shot is a huge part of making that happen. Now it's a proven and a well-known fact that the most flattering focal length for the face is between 70 and 100mm. As you can see here now, you can see the difference between my face at 24mm as it is at 70mm. As you can see in the 24mm shot, my face is distorted, and in the 70mm shot, that is more of a true image. 24mm shots are still great to use at a wedding, especially for establishing venue shots or details if you need to get close up, or sometimes even group shots. But anytime when you're wanting to really zoom in on the couple or a guest or somebody laughing or whatever, it's best to stick between 70 to 100mm if possible. Tip number 4 is all about capturing the details of the day. Now the couple have spent a lot of time and money on the lead up to the wedding to making sure that their big day is as perfect as possible for them. So as the videographer, that means it's your job to capture as much of that detail as you can to help them remember their day. And I mean things from the brides and bridesmaids dresses, the groom's suit, details of the venue, right the way down to the table decorations, the chairs, flowers, everything. The other thing with a wedding video is that you can never have too much footage to go through. There's nothing worse than when you get back and you sit down to edit and you just haven't got enough footage, and you're having to use bits of footage that isn't as good as it could be. So it doesn't hurt to ever shoot more footage than you need, and to get clips of those details that you can just add in between clips to help tell the story of the day. Not only that, but it will really help the couple to love the video when they look back on it, because there's so much going on for them on their big day that they forget to soak in all these little details. And if you've managed to capture all of them in your wedding film that you give them, they're just going to be twice as happy with it. Now, the fifth and final tip for capturing cinematic wedding videos is all about movement. I cannot express how important movement is in making your wedding films more cinematic. I literally only use a tripod for filming the speeches. Other than that, the thing stays in the car, and I don't like to use it unless I really have to. So if you're following the earlier tips, you're already running around with your camera on 60 frames per second on a glide cam or a gimbal, so moving shots shouldn't really be an issue. Now, there's several different ways in which you can incorporate movement into your shots. This could be having the couple move through your frame rather than them stood there posing, or it could also be looking for other moving objects within your frame to help add interest to your shot, such as confetti or sparklers or things like that. The final way of capturing movement, and probably the most obvious one, is to make that movement yourself. Now, since you're already using a glide cam or a gimbal, this shouldn't really be an issue, as you can move around your subject and create that movement. Whether you're panning around the subject or zooming in or zooming out, these are all good techniques to help create movement in your shots, which really help your viewer engage in your video. And not only that, it just makes them feel that much more cinematic and like a film. So there you have it, guys. Those are my top 5 tips for shooting cinematic wedding films. If you have any questions regarding any of these tips or any other tips you would like, be sure to drop a comment below or hit me up on Instagram. And if you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more videos on weddings and wedding tips and how I edit wedding videos, then give this video a big thumbs up and I'll be sure to make some more content on that. And yeah, I will catch you in the next one.